Okay, I think I'm going to turn it over to council and let council discuss it now. So, Jim.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to strenuously oppose the passage of this amendment for the following reasons. Number one, the proposal was brought to committee by staff without any patron, vendor, or commission complaint or recommendation. The proposal was added to the Farmers Market Commission agenda last week after I questioned Mr. Hall about the impetus for the proposed change. Number two, the small handful of licensed street vendors do no harm to the farmers market and in fact may add to the attraction in some cases. Number three, the proposed change creates an appearance that the farmers market is using its position as the tall hog at the trough of public subsidy to bully small enterprises whose business model may not line up exactly with the philosophy of the farmers market. In short, I feel that the change benefits no one and it does harm to some, and therefore should be rejected. I understand the protective position of the Market Commission and the associated staff, and I don't have a problem with the standards that they impose within the market boundaries. We definitely don't want the farmers market to be a cheap flea market type of fare, but we also don't want it to be an elitist, snobbish type of market. So I think outside the boundary is outside the boundary and it should be left alone.
Gina.
Okay, I too, guess I'm not as strenuous as Mr. Bowen, but I'm sort of frothing at the mouth. I really do not appreciate. Yeah, think about that.
Everybody take a couple of deep breaths. We're going to get through this.
The way that this was proposed was incorrect and at best irritating. Let's have some feedback from the commissions and let's have some warning and some straightforward communication. I do think there are some questions that I would like to see answered. I don't know if this is a form of a charge or not because I'm one of 5 right now. I want us to address the question of the mixes or the ingredients. What percentage of local do we require in our farmers market? That's never been addressed, and it seems somewhat unfairly applied if you look at the existing food vendors versus say by the dozen, for example. You know, what was the reasoning there, and what was the percentage that tips the balance from a yes to a no? There's also the jury process. That's a squishy gray zone if I've ever seen one, and we need to bolster that very strongly. I also do not believe that we. I don't want to say, what'd you say, tall hog at the trough of something subsidy? It was horrible. Yeah. I do think that it is important that the market continue and that we support it, but I don't think it should come at the detriment of local business.
John?
Well, what she said and what he said. However, oh, thank you.
We need to hear you, John.
My problem, in addition to those, has more to do with the perception that we are going against essentially one particular business. And whether we are or whether we are not, I perceive that we are. We're using the city council's hammer against a local business. And that local business, I don't know these people. If half what they said is true, we should continue supporting them. And if there's any way at all that we can get them into the farmers market, they should be allowed in. And you mentioned the jury process, and I think that when it's all said and done, I can't support this, and I can't support it mostly because I think there's a perception of we are going to force you out because we don't like what you do. And I don't think that that's the way this city operates. I don't think that's the way the city council operates, nor do I think it's the way that we should operate. So I'm going to come down on the side of do not pass.
Okay, we got two more counselors, Art and Catherine, so I'll go with you, Art, and I'll come over to Catherine.
I feel like I'm operating from a point of insufficient information as it stands right now, so at the risk of sounding like my old major professor, I have 3 questions and a comment. So first question is like this. Approximately how far out does 200 feet go from the farmer's market boundaries?
I can answer that.
Okay.
What they measured, it basically would take people on the east side of the farmer's market boundaries, would put them on the eastern side, east side of Washington, and on the western side, it would basically put them on the western side of Jackson, and then probably about not quite a half a block down north on and south.
So a block away from the,
Not quite a block.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Art.
Okay, next one is, in the current ordinance, what does on occasion actually mean? Is that once a week, once a month, once a quarter?
That's what it sounds like to me.
I can give you a little.
So it could be
legislative
anything,
history
I
on
guess?
that. When council allowed sidewalk vending by bricks and mortar businesses, it was intended to allow the crazy days type or bargain table situations that you see in most downtowns. Was not intended to be an every week or everyday occurrence. However, when the bookstore down, I can't remember the name of the bookstore.
People?
Book people. They had a rack out front that they sold books all the time, and of course, the bicycle shop also had a rack of bikes outside. And it seemed to be accepted by the community, and that was fine. So
just
occasional
basic
could be
community
every.
definition.
Exactly.
And the last question, and I don't mean this pejoratively, but if the Donuts by the Dozen aren't operating on the sidewalk directly in front of their business, whose sidewalk are they operating on? And how did that come around?
Okay, I can answer that as well. Sidewalks in the downtown area, the front of the business is the beginning of the public rights-of-way. The city council has the authority to regulate activities within the public right-of-way, which is why the occasional vending out front, the sidewalk cafes all required separate permits from the city council. The regulation of those activities in the city rights-of-way are exclusively up to the city council. In the past, there have been discussions about what does it mean to be within the farmer's market. The jury process, I think that Gina alluded to, is something that the previous owner of By the Dozen Donuts attempted to get juried into the market. They failed to do so. So the previous owner got as close to the market boundary as she could with her business, which was fine as long as she didn't come within the market boundary. So this was something that's been discussed at Farmers Market Commission and by the groups that preceded the Farmers Market Commission on several occasions. I guess one of the things I'd warn the council about before you dismiss, and not saying that this ordinance in its current form needs to move ahead as it's presented, but it's easy to take a one situation vendor, if you will, or owner of a sidewalk business and make a sweeping, I guess, prohibition of something. As Jen indicated, there have been between 10 and 5 of these various vendors throughout the years. And although you have a downtown business doing it today, you may have someone who isn't affiliated with the downtown business or a local business doing it tomorrow. So I think the council's reluctance to move ahead tonight is probably a good thing to do while looking at several things. How the jury process works, maybe as the Farmers Market Commission is moving forward with their strategic plan, and that process can be looked at, looking at perhaps some alternative than just an outright prohibition for 200 feet. So I think further work can be done, and certainly that's why the Farmers Market Commission was formed.
Mr. Mayor, could I address the question?
Yeah, because I don't think we quite got to what I was aiming at, is
Okay, well,
All
hang-
good
hang on just a
information.
second, Jennifer, so who you're directing the question to?
it was
You want,
going both ways, is just kind of, if the vending operation isn't directly in front of the storefront brick and mortar that's there, whose storefront are they in front of, and how did that come to be?
I can tell you that under the ordinance, if it's a restaurant, a food vendor can't be right in front. You have to have the permission of the business right in front of that to be adjacent to the property. But that's for a sidewalk vendor. But a business can actually do its business right out in front of it.
Yeah, that's kind of where that's where I'm
And I would
trying
just,
to-
one other thing, just remember, this is an issue about regulating the public right-of-way, and there's other issues that have been discussed about the farmer's market process. So make sure that you understand that there's two different issues here, at least two different that have been brought up, and we're only dealing with the public, or the only thing before you is the public right-of-way
Yeah, I think
regulation.
this kind of impinges, at least in my head, on what the heck is going on.
or did that answer your question?
No.
Do you want more?
I'd
You
like
want-
to-
Okay.
If I could address
Yeah,
it,
go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor and Council. So By the Dozen rents space in the Neely Travel Building that's on the corner of 6th and Main. It's been any number of things over the years. That tiny little space right next to John's Alley was an eye doctor. I believe it was a hairstylist at one point. So we have a little tiny spot there. And our landlord, prior to us buying the business, the landlord had an agreement with the previous owner that allowed, so if this is the corner of the block, and here's Neely's, and we're tucked right here, here's 6th Street, here's Main, the landlord allows us to come right out here on the corner. And so visibly, we function right up against the boundaries of the market. We aren't saying that we don't, but we are saying
So
that
it's
is.
with permission of the...
It is with permission of our landlord, and when we purchased the business, that agreement was in place. And so that was our understanding that it would be able to continue.
So,
You have one more
and-
comment? I want to go
Yes,
to
now I'm
Kathy.
done with questions, and now it's the comment. So, the comment is, I think we're operating somewhat prematurely here and not exactly putting into the ordinance the results that we would like to obtain in terms of especially regulating some of the vendors who may be skirting the issues of fresh produce and things like that, and that's problematic. And also, as Gina brought up, I'm interested in having this returned back and work it back through the process again, dealing with some of the other food vendors, and how do you draw a line about how much is brought in, how much isn't? And my profession as a cereal chemist has taught me that cake donuts and donut formulation is the trickiest bit of chemical leavening activity that there is. And to formulate on your own is going to lead to an inconsistent product. So how do we handle this issue? It's very sticky, and for that matter, are the restaurants that are selling burritos and things, are they making all the burritos in-house from scratch ingredients, or are they bringing in the burrito tortillas from elsewhere? And this is something I think that the Farmers Market Commission could probably go back and look at more closely, both in terms of defining what goes into allowing someone into the farmer's market, but also vetting the language of the ordinance to better capture what it is that seems to be the impetus behind writing this ordinance at all. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Art. After giving us that scientific thing on donuts, I just like to eat them. I don't care. As long as they taste good. And go with coffee. Now, Catherine?
Well, I think we're all coming from the same place, and that we felt like this came to us without coming through the commission and Public Works and Finance and kind of finding its way up. And so everything that everyone has said, I agree with, and we all question the same thing. I went looking through the minutes from the Farmers Market Commission and hunting through Public Works and Finance. So I'm trying to figure out, how did this end up on our agenda? So it was the same thing. So I really like what Aaron said, which is what I was hoping that we could slow down and reevaluate specifically and go through the process and just kind of turn it back to the commission. Obviously, it has a history. And there were issues, and I think the management of the market's been done really well, and I think that the focus of the market has been really clear to make sure that it is a farmer's market and the integrity. I think that word is true to that. But I think it would help to just wind this back, because you're trying to deal with something larger. I definitely see that this is an issue to make sure people aren't using the market for their benefit. So I don't even know if we can do this. I wanted to move to withdraw
could move to, yeah, you can either move to table it, or you could move the, no.
There's several different things.
Reject.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
you
looking
can
for the-
outright reject the ordinance if you like.
Send it back.
Yeah, so then I would move to reject the ordinance.
Second.
Okay.
And my first job was at a donut store for a year, and I can make great donuts.
Okay. Well, we've got a motion by Catherine and a second by Jim just to reject the ordinance in this form and just send it back for further work to staff. Is that how I'm
Yes,
understanding
yeah, I
this
think-
motion? Does
That's
that
how
sound
I
right
would
to
understand
everybody?
it.
Just to
Any
go
other
through-
comment before we do a roll here?
No?
I'll start with Art.
Aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, now there's a couple of things I want to say as we go along here. Our farmers market is the absolute best in the state of Idaho, make no mistake about it. And we're in the top 20 in the nation. And that's something that this community can be proud of. And Erin, she's there somewhere. You guys have done a wonderful job, and I appreciate the comments that you had, Erin, because the commission has done a wonderful job in looking into these things. And I think, and the commission's only been around several years now, so you guys have been tasked with a lot of things because you've got a growing market. And there was a comment one of the counselors made up here that, look, we don't want this thing to be a flea market. We want to have it so it's right and it fits our community, it works in. But we all know what an absolute gem this is for our community. So with that being said, you know, there's some things that the commission could also take a look at. Maybe we need to open up from First Street down to Third on that side too, if we have the need for that. That might be a possibility, Aaron, to look into as we're going along. And I appreciate the fact of what you got up and said, because I think this kind of came to us, and I think we got to be cognizant of folks that are businesses right in our downtown as well. This isn't, you know, somebody comes from out of town or comes somewhere and wants to set up outside the boundaries. We're talking about something of a different thing too. So we need to work on this. But I wanted to make sure that the commission understands, and the jury that works on this, that I appreciate it. And I think all these counselors up here would say the same thing, the work that you men and women do, because it's a big deal for us. And we want to get it right. We want to have it right for our community, because this is the #1 market in the state. I get a chance as a mayor to brag about it every single time I go to Boise, and I can kind of jab them with it. And I get a chance to even talk to the Boise City about what they do, and they've asked me questions about it. I've invited them up, and I think that's a big deal for us. So, and even on a national level. So that's a big deal for us. We're going to all in this entire community be proud of it. And so with that being said, we'll move on to the next thing, but I just wanted to share that with everybody in this room because it's a big deal for us. And in 2 weeks, we're going to start another farmers market year, and we're going to have a downtown bathroom. Isn't that cool? So with that, thank you.